So, girl of many names, we're calling you Hayley.
Yes. I mean, you can really call me whatever you want at this point, but I'm back as Hayley.
You are the first person who wanted a second podcast.
Wow.
Hard to believe. I know. People usually run away from us. You are running to us.
Oh, of course. I mean, I'm in your corner. We know this. I'm Team Perry.
The last time we interviewed you, 2 weeks later, is when your life was turned completely upside down. And it was insane. And I remember thinking we were horrified and we didn't know how you were going to get through it. It was unbelievable. And you not only got through it, but you came through it on the other side amazing with so much knowledge, so much power, and business ideas that you might have not ever have had or been able to go through. I'm probably thinking that would be your step out of line moment, so to speak.
Yes, I would agree with that. It's so interesting to kind of revisit that because we were in Lake Tahoe, I believe, and we did our podcast
Yeah.
together. And it was during COVID still. And everything still seemed very uncertain. And then when this whole, legal dispute got dropped, it really changed the whole landscape of what I could do and what I couldn't. And then, I mean, there was a lot of restrictions in place. And I know a lot of people know the story at this point. But for me, I think the step out of line element of it was, how do I maintain my excitement for creativity, even if I can't express it the way that I am most accustomed to? And what is the best way to just simply move forward, because there were so many variables that I couldn't control. It was very helpful to have an incredible support system. And, I think, Perry, this is something that you've really built a community around you of support and bringing visibility to, disability, but all kinds of ways of just going against the grain. And I think that that is something so many people find purpose and want that momentum behind them. And so I think there's a lot to relate there for sure.
Did you ever have to go through such an intense, anxious time in your life before that you were able to draw from? How did you know how to deal with this? How did you even start?
When you think about like adversity, I mean, it just comes in so many different forms, and thinking about even just like school and growing up, and if you're dealing with a bully or you're dealing with you're not performing in your schoolwork or something like that, just the trials and tribulations of life come in so many different ways. And so much of it is relative. I think because I had really gone all in on wedding dress design and spent my education, childhood, industry experience, everything just kind of dedicated to this one thing, it made it a lot more dramatic that I couldn't do it. And it's hard to really pinpoint a moment in my life, before that, where I was dealing with that level of restriction. And I would say gymnastics, growing up an athlete and thinking about all your different events. And maybe when you totally bomb on one event, you still have three left to do, that
Right.
there's the idea of there's more opportunity to shine. And so maybe it kind of came from that. I don't know. But that, I think the resilient factor is something that you build like a muscle over time. And so I do feel like the more adversity you face, unfortunately, the better you become at dealing with it. So it's probably through experience.
You also all the emotions over the past 4 years. And, trying at some point, there angry at the outcome. At other points, you wish things turned out differently. So how do you balance all those emotions without like breaking down?
And be able to continue on,
Yeah.
like living your life.
It's really hard to not let emotions make the decisions for you, especially because when you are hurting or you're feeling passionate about something, it's because you care. And that's where it comes from. And recognizing that you have a real heart and soul invested in this, it's hard to separate that. And so I think in my worst times during the lawsuit and when I just felt pretty knocked down, I tried to keep myself very aware of things in my life that I am so incredibly blessed to have, especially in my support system, and, simple basic things that really make me feel proud. And my journey isn't just defined by that one moment. And while it is very emotional and scary what can happen and all these things, the person I've become, and also the reputation and the skill, these things that just will never be taken, in that I have those to hold forever. I still have the connections and relationships and great friends and family and that kind of stuff. Really just kind of brought it back to center of, okay, that actually is way more important to me than how I'm just simply feeling in this moment. And so it does take a little bit of a check of your own ego, and also a humbling, because I appreciate how much that experience I've had was a humbling. And you can become really, really good at something and then all of a sudden not be able to do it. The fact of the matter remains is, okay, well, what are you going to do now? And what's kind of next? But I would also say, for me as a person working out and just moving my body or doing those things that just take a lot of extra effort, help change my brain chemistry a bit and always make me feel better after the fact. So that was a little low-hanging fruit for me to keep my mind right, is just moving myself a bit.
If you didn't have Conrad, I don't know how it would have been for you. I think it would have been so much harder. He seems like he was like the most amazing person in the world for you to have by your side.
Very valid. I actually get very emotional thinking about Conrad, just because the journey that we've been on in our relationship and stuff, we've dealt a lot with these unexpected hardships, and he had a health crisis, and seeing what I had started with and then where I ended up, you see the whole sides of life, best of you, worst of you, all of that. And it's the thing I'm most proud of, I would say, is our, holding on to each other through all of that.
You recently testified in Congress, pink outfit, a little Elle Woods. Very Elle Woods. And we so admire your advocacy and your strength. And you actually helped Perry out a great deal, because when Perry knew that she wanted to form her own foundation and we were raising money for a charity and she was using her name, we knew that if we broke away, we were going to encounter a possible situation where they would say, you can't have your name. But because what you went through, we trademarked it during the pandemic. And I think it took like 12 months. And we waited till the Team Perry name was trademarked. And once we had that, then Perry said, okay, now I want to form my own foundation. And it was a very long process, but you helped her know that she had to protect herself. I don't know if you knew that.
I am thrilled to hear that, and well done. Because a lot of times when you have a passion and you have an idea, you just want to go, 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 go. And to kind of step back and say, how can I make sure I'm setting the right precedent, putting those protective things in place? What don't I know here that I need to know right now?
Are you allowed to use any of your prior designs at all? Did you gain access to that as well?
I did. So in the settlement, I purchased the entire intellectual property portfolio, which includes obviously my name, but also the designs, the aesthetic. And so what's really fun is, in rebranding, we can really think about what favorite dresses we had and ones that just brought extra joy. How can we bring them back or reinvent them or have those icon, styles part of the collection. And so it'll be really fun to bring it all together and present it and bring it back to life.
We see behind you the fruits of your labor when you were unable to be the beautiful designer of wedding dresses for years, and you had a creative outlet that had to come out.
Going into shoes, never anticipated that in all of my, wedding dress career. But when I was laying out the foundation of, okay, I've got this somewhat of a skill set in design, how do I transfer it? Where can I go? Shoes excited me a lot. And I felt like we could kind of infuse a bit of the signature aesthetic the Hayley Paige aesthetic, even though it had to be called something else. I loved the name cheval because it had this giddy up to it. And, it means horse in French. I've studied French couture. And so there was this fun little rhythm of romance and storytelling throughout the shoes. But it's been a really fun challenge. It's also been a lot of work running a small business because before I was just focused on design and creative and just different elements of things. And now running a business and thinking about all these inventory management and P&L statements, and there's just a lot. And so I'm grateful for the learnings of that. And it's also something that's given me a lot of responsibility and accountability in shape shifting and knowing that you can teach an old dog new tricks, you can take on things no matter what age you are, how much experience you've had in another category. The pivot is a real thing and you should invest in it for yourself, even if it just helps you move the ball forward.
So normally I would probably think that a designer over time changes and grows and designs differently the way you did, let's say, 10 years ago, perhaps even more so. I don't know. Do you feel like you have a different edge or you're still the original Hayley Paige?
I never stopped designing in my head and in the unseen hours. And that was something really important to me because of exactly what you said is your aesthetic evolves and you have to stay really close. I feel you have to stay close to your craft to see things changing and moving the ball forward. And I think if I had just completely put it on hold and never looked at it and just departed from it entirely, I would feel much differently than if I had, what I did do was continue to create and keep in touch with design. So I still feel somewhat on track, but what I will say is I'm really excited to have this alchemy of the Hayley Paige aesthetic brought back to life, but also infuse that newness. Because the way I approach design, I think of each individual dress just like each individual bride, and there's something to be told here. And so every single one of those is an opportunity to move the aesthetic forward potentially. So, and some are more edgy than others, and I'm really eclectic in that. So I'm just so excited to get back to it.
And you're naming them, like I remember you had the Glazer, one after Stevie Nicks, the Stevie. So do you still have these dreams of these dresses and then find a perfect name for them? Is that still your thing?
Oh, for sure. There will be some form of a naming ceremony.
You were pretty big on Say Yes to the Dress. Would you ever want to do TV again?
I would. I absolutely would. I enjoyed my time on Say Yes to the Dress, and I'm so grateful for that experience. I wouldn't say no. I think it just has to be in the right structure because something with Say Yes is it was so organic. It's exactly what I was doing at the time. Just I was a designer and I loved interacting with brides, and so that was easily captured. I'm not sure I would make too great of a scripted actor. In fact, I think I'd be a terrible scripted actor. It's like my ability to sing is inversely proportional to my taste in music. I cannot sing, but I have great taste in music, at least in my opinion, I do.
What music is inspiring you today? Because last time we spoke, it was Fleetwood Mac.
Well, obviously, always Fleetwood Mac, but I have been listening to a lot of In Excess, which is probably off the beaten path for a lot of people, 80s and 90s. But yeah, In Excess is that's where I go typically these days, or Talking Heads.
And now your foundation. So Perry had the fortune of being your first intern.
That's right.
For the foundation, and she loved it. She loved it because she loved what you represented. She loved what you were doing. She loved creating for it because you gave her such a great canvas to create.
The foundation's really a message of support, and it came out of my experience and wanting to make sure this conversation was being had and are there resources we can provide that will help set creatives, artists, entrepreneurs on a better trajectory for their career. So there are 3 parts to the foundation. We have a grant where we offer financial funding for pretty much anyone that wants to apply in terms of their business trajectory, their career, if they need a contract looked over. It's financial funding. We do have an application process. 2, we have an advocacy Rolodex list where we provide a referral to either pro bono or low bono attorneys. So if you're an influencer needing a contract looked over, or you need help with a template, writing an NDA, all that kind of stuff, we try to put you in touch with people that are slightly more accessible and affordable. Because a lot of law firms actually have to do a certain number of pro bono hours a year. And then the third part is really just general curriculum and creating a bit of a community and an advocacy for, here are some female stories. Perry, you're one of our highlights, but we hear some stories and things of how other women and young creators or entrepreneurs have dealt with situations, and why, you know, it can be very inspiring for somebody else going through something similar.
And you're also a speaker now. That seems like it was a natural fit for you.
I do like speaking. I get a little nervous still, because even though I'm typically telling some version of the same story, every audience is a bit different. And I find that it's much easier when it's more of a discussion or a panelist type of scenario than a keynote speech. Because sometimes when I'm giving those keynotes, I think about how a lot of my story is a bit jarring. And what the way I tell it is so important, because your relationship to your story changes over time. And now that I'm on the other side of, you know, a dispute, you just look back and you realize that what you want to say is actually this, you know, so it changes. But I'm happy to do it, and just hope to inspire, be a resource, or ignite some kind of excitement for somebody.
What would be a piece of advice you would give to a young creator who may be facing similar challenges that you did in the past 4 years? What would you say to that person?
It's never as good or as bad as it seems. Which is super general, but I think it's important advice, because we suffer a lot more in our imaginations than we do in reality. And a lot of times when we're going through something really dark or depressing, we feel like we're going to be there forever. And it is temporary. It's good to remember that it is a temporary time in your life, and that, you know, your emotional home, your equilibrium is where you should live most of the time. And being, you know, really kind to yourself and your brain, and what you tell yourself is very important, of course, but inversely as well, when you're at the highest of highs and everything just seems like it's amazing, you know, it's also temporary, and it's good to humble yourself in those moments. So I think the message there is sustainability of self. Never as good or as bad as it seems.
Also, it's important for like your mental health to make sure like you're not. I overthink like everything. I'm chronically overthinking. I think of something that could happen that could not happen. Like that's just who I am.
Which is why we're both very indecisive.
Right.
Like there's two roads. Which one are you taking? And
Right.
you know, there's always like you don't know what you're doing. It's very nerve-wracking sometimes. We both have that problem. Even over choosing what Starbucks we're getting. Like that could take
Decision
us hours.
It's a real thing all day long. Make this choice, make this choice. It's a
Right.
lot.
It's just a lot.
What would be one thing that you wish people knew about you?
I think people would be surprised to hear that I am a little bit of a lone wolf, in that growing up as a kid, I was always doing studies or at gymnastics. And so I didn't have a whole lot of time for friendships and social environments, and got straight into college and got really into design. And, you know, like I've always kind of been busy, and I really enjoy work, and I actually enjoy being alone quite a bit. And I think one thing that's really helped me is that social media has actually allowed me to be social and connect with people on my kind of terms, in that, you know, you can kind of decide when you want to be social and show up and not feel like you have to put too much effort into it. And I think that's been a nice balance for me. But for most of my days, it is just me and Winnie alone, and we're working. So it probably is surprising, I think, for people thinking I'm like out, you know,
Being Hayley Paige.
like doing a million, I don't know, things. Maybe they don't think that, but that's probably what I would say.
I'm also the same way.
And I think maybe COVID kind of gave, at least for me, gave me a little more permission to enjoy the fact that I really like getting deep down the rabbit holes and work. And a lot of times I would rather spend hours doing that than actually going out to dinner or doing something like that. And, that's just something I realized about myself, but I know everybody is very different in how they get inspiration and communicate with people, and getting out there is a big part of being an artist in general. So it's just a different life in Florida. I don't get out as much as I used to. Perry, I would love to know what you are most excited about right now, and also what is the most challenging right now.
I'm doing a TED Talk next year, and I'm
TED
then,
Talk? That's
yeah,
major.
I'm hoping I can finally tell my story the way that I want to tell it in my own words. I can have control. And a lot of times when you do interviews, like I have some interviews recently and I get asked questions specifically for PR, but like also I sometimes wish I could have control over my own narrative. So I feel like that would be a great place to be like, this is how I want you to hear my story. This is how I think, you should take it in. And I'm hoping to educate people about how they should treat people like myself, how my life can be used as like a lesson to, for others to, make the world more inclusive. I'm very excited about that.
And what's your biggest challenge besides me?
I think, I can only pass couple months. My mom also, like, it doesn't allow, like, fatigue and just feeling tired. I have a lot of migraines the past couple months, so, like, I can't function for, like, most of the day. I only have, like, 2 to 4 hours that, like, I'm okay and I can work. And the rest of that I can't. So it's very frustrating. I'm just so tired all the time, and it's just like I can't function.
And then when you ask her, yes, Perry, we would love if you came back and help us, Perry's immediate response was, oh my God, I would love that. Because there's so much she wants to do.
I'm like,
She would do it.
The bigger your aspirations, the bigger your problems for sure. Because I can imagine you say yes to every opportunity that comes.
She's learned to pick and choose. So yeah, she's learned to say no. She's learned if somebody says it has to be great for you, and if she's not 100% interested, she's like, I can't afford the time it's going to take for the interview and the editing and this. So she's learned to say no and only say yes to what she loves to do. So the fact that she said yes to you, it means that she loves you and she would for sure do something for you.
Having that discretion is a form of real self-respect, and knowing, what you can handle and where your limitations are and things like that. It's a wonderful thing to have full ownership over, and learning to say no and not feeling like you're disappointing people. Huge lesson I'm still learning. So I admire that.
What is like your 5-year plan now?
I think about this a lot, and I really generalize a bit of it in that I'm entering an era that, while there is some familiarity to it, it is still so very new. And they say that, you should know things by your second rodeo, but that's a low amount of rodeos still. Okay. And so I'm really approaching this as I'm still learning. I'm carrying a lot more lessons with me this time, and a little bit more wherewithal of what not to do, which is great. But I also have some pretty lofty aspirations in rebranding Hayley Paige and making that a huge priority, and making up for lost time and just getting back into that business that I really, really love. But I also, Conrad and I have to get married.
Eventually.
This has to happen.
Right. Now you have no excuse.
I know. I'm really looking forward to that. And settling a little bit more, because we've been moving around Florida quite a bit, and Conrad's in real estate now. So a lot of our life has changed from what it was in New York City, and growing with the times and the differences and all of that stuff is just, it's been a big journey. So.
But Florida's going to be where you're going to settle down, you think?
I don't know. I would guess right now, yes. But I also feel like so much of our life has been like, whoa, I didn't think we would ever live in Florida. And so who knows where we are going to end up. But I'm just happy to be here and through the storm, and still have some pretty awesome relationships, just like our friendship, Terry. It's been years now.
Yeah.
So it's really wonderful to have some things feel very constant in your life. Thank you so much for having me as a returning guest. I feel honored.
Now they're all going to want to come back.